Dr. Berhane Ashmelash from Release Eritrea joins me. He's the director of that organization. They work with persecuted Christians in the East African nation. Dr. Berhane, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we've been following his Voice of the Martyrs Eritrea since the early 2000s with evangelical Christians there. The government originally, they started closing down the churches, and then when the believers were meeting, they would arrest them. Thousands have been put into shipping containers, military prisons, horrible, horrible conditions. But we're now starting to hear some positive stories coming out of Eritrea involving these Christians. Some have now been released. The latest report is that 31 Christians have been released from prison in Eritrea. What are you hearing?
Yes, the first time I heard was, I think, a week ago. It was posted on the social media from the pro-government people. Then we asked some family members of the released, and it's true. Now, some people say over 35, some people over 30. So the number, we cannot verify it because it's difficult to communicate with Eritrea. It's not safe to contact to anybody. So still, we are not sure about the number, but it's true. At least we have over 30 people free.
Why is this happening, Dr. Berhane? Has the government softened their stand against evangelicals often they see as spies and having ties to the West? What is the motivation here?
We don't know the motivation. A lot of people suspect it is because of COVID-19, because probably prisons are overcrowded. So that's what the rumors say. I heard about the news in the middle of August. They were saying that they are gonna release some Christians. So we've been following the news. So it's possible because of coronavirus, or we don't know. That's what we suspect.
We also have heard, though, that even though these believers have been released, they're not free to leave the country.
Yeah, in Eritrea, it is the same for all, not only for the ex-prisoners. Everybody on the edge of what you call military service age, they are not free to leave. So I think they are released on bail. So somebody has to bail them out because they cannot leave illegally from the country. So that's what I heard.
Do we have any idea how many believers, followers of Jesus are imprisoned? I mean, we've heard anywhere from 300 to 3,000. Our partner, Release International in the UK, where you're based, have said maybe it's around 500. Do we have any idea how many Christians are being held in these horrible conditions?
I think I suspect 400 to 500. The only problem is there are some what you call this military camps. Also, they have their own prisons. So if somebody from the military service is arrested, they don't send them to these prisons. They keep them with them, but in their unit's prison. So we don't know the exact number, but roughly from 400 to 500, that's what we know.
And from what I understand, some of the believers that have now been released or will be released have been imprisoned more than 10 years. And I guess there's going to be challenges when they get out of prison. I mean, they'd be very institutionalized. I mean, they have been in these situations, and away from their families in horrible conditions for a number of years. So it's going to be a lot of care needed to help these people to reintegrate into society.
Yes, it's not going to be easy. Anybody who stayed over 10 years is hard. I know somebody who is now in Ethiopia who was in prison for 14 years. Is really struggling to cope. So it's more of it's mainly of mental issue. So people will continue to struggle, but eventually they will recover. A lot of them recover, but it takes time. And they need also family support and friend support. So that's what we hope, that they will get support from their extended family or friends.
And we certainly need to be praying for them. Now, two of the believers that we have been talking a lot about, I personally have been talking about, since the early 2000s, is two pastors in Asmara, the Full Gospel Church, Hali Niski and Dr. Kiflu Gebra Meskel. They've been in prison since 2004. Is there any word on their current situation?
There's no news. There are not only these two, there are also three priests from the Orthodox Church, Dr. Futsum, Dr. Taklaab, and Reverend Gabra Medhin. They were also arrested in November 2004. So they are in the same prison. So we have no news from the senior pastors.
Is there any idea, Dr. Berhane, how the church is doing in Eritrea? I mean, I've covered, in China, in Iran, we hear of the growth of the church in spite of the persecution. What are some of the things that you're hearing when it comes to what's happening with the followers of Jesus and the expansion of Christianity to those that have a relationship with Jesus in Eritrea?
Anywhere in the world, wherever there is persecution, there is always growth, because it's difficult to control people, because faith is more of personal thing. So people will continue to believe, whether persecuted or free. So that's what's happening in Eritrea. I remember most Christians who are in Eritrea, I don't know them. I left Eritrea 20 years ago. So the church being closed for 18 years. But now we have more Christians than 18 years ago. It's everywhere. It's like in China, North Korea, Iran, wherever, any country, it's the same. So that's the nature of Christianity.
Well, I had the privilege of being in Eritrea, and me and my co-workers were accused of being CIA spies, which is what the government of Eritrea claims. And they say that these pastors and Christians that are in prison, they're not there because of their faith. It's because they're seen as enemies of the country. We know these things are not true, but the reality is that there has been hardship. I have met Eritrean believers in Ethiopia in the refugee camps, and I have been very impressed, Dr. Berhane, by their incredible faith. But there has been so much suffering. Are you optimistic that what we're seeing now with the release of these prisoners, these 31, and then there were 22 Methodist prisoners in July released from another prison, which was mainly women and children. Is there a shift, and are you hopeful that things will soon get back to what it was at one time, or is it going to take a change of leadership there?
I think with this leadership, I have no hope. I don't think that they will change. They are very stubborn, and they will continue to persecute Christians. I have no hope. But every system, every government changes. There's going to be a change. I remember during the Ethiopian what you call communist regime. At that time, I was a Christian, and we were worshiping secretly in houses, and there was a lot of persecution. And several times I was accused for being a CIA agent. So I was surprised to hear, that accusation also with the modern government, with the new Eritrean government. So wherever you are, they always have to find something to accuse you. They cannot arrest you for being a Christian, because it's a religious country. Eritrea is 50% Christian and 50% Muslim. So they cannot accuse you for believing. If you are a Muslim, they would say you are a Muslim fundamentalist, even if you are not. If they want to accuse you for other reason, they give you that name. If you are a Christian, they will say CIA. So they use this name. So they know that it's not true, because they know us very well. We work together, especially in my church. We were involved in development works, and they know us who we are. Yeah. And they know that we are not involved in politics. They know that we are innocent, and we are not. We don't put our country in any danger. But they want to find a name for us. So sometimes they use these names just to accuse us or to keep us in prison. And they know Dr. Kuflu very well. They know Haile Nazgi very well. They know him very well. He was working for the bank. He was working for the government. They know him. He was a Christian, when they hired him. But they have to give him this name suddenly because otherwise they cannot accuse him for being a Christian because it's not a crime. Christianity, being a Christian is not a crime. That's what I mean.
Right, and yet they use all sorts of other things to imprison these believers. So are you optimistic, Dr. Berhane? I know from the spiritual perspective, we know the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. No dictator can demolish what Jesus started 2,000 years ago. But are you optimistic that there will be some freedom in time and that the church will continue to grow even if that doesn't happen?
Yes. This government can be changed or can stay, but the church will continue to grow because, as what you mentioned, this church was built on the rock, and it says, the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And persecution hasn't started now. It didn't start yesterday, but it's been there for the past 2,000 years. Hundreds of thousands being martyred for their faith. And still, there are millions of Christians everywhere in this world.
Yeah, there's no way that the gospel will not continue to go forth. And as we conclude our time together, Dr. Berhane, how can we in Canada and around the world, people that are watching this interview, how can we best pray and support our brothers and sisters in Christ, including your organization that's doing such amazing work?
Yeah, they can. The best thing is to continue to pray because that's the only tool we have. We don't, we don't use any tool or any weapon to fight, but our weapon is prayer. So we want them to pray. And also, it's good to support our organizations financially because we need to support, especially those who left the country. A lot of them are now in Ethiopia who have been in prison for years. So we also support, this ex-prisoners. So that's also is very helpful. But the main thing is prayer. We believe in prayer. Finance and other resources are secondary because we need God to act on the situation. We cannot solve it by our finances or by our resources, but we need God's hand. So that's what I ask for.
Well, we know from the Bible tells us very clearly that our battle is not against flesh and blood. It's not against the dictatorship of Eritrea, but we do need to intercede and pray. Dr. Berhane, thank you for joining me today. Thank you for all the wonderful work that you're doing in Eritrea. I know that it breaks your heart to see so many of your countrymen suffering, but we also know that God has so many amazing people, even behind those prison walls, that are doing amazing work and telling people about Jesus. So thank you again for your work. God bless you, brother.
Thank you, and God bless you.